agile that is failing over here? Or is it the processes that are not flexible, that are so rigid, so adamant, that has resulted in the failure? So that's one thing to ponder. So is it the processes that has made this project fail, or is it agile as a whole that's failing? I'm going to discuss some common symptoms that we see in organizations who want to become agile, and change is one of them. So let's say your leaders come in, your leader steps in and says that, yes, we want to become agile, so we have to change. Yes, I will. Yes, you all will have to weigh the way you work. You'll have to change, but I'm sorry, I'm not going to change. So if that's an adamant statement that senior leadership is going to make, then again, the change would not be seen. It could not be reflected, right? So if you want Agile to be successful, then it's a CEO who sets up the culture. The culture should be there. What kind of mindset do you want? And it's him who needs to drive it. But if your leadership is just talking and not really walking the talk, then again you see is a bizarre failure of Agile transformation. I would like to talk about this particular slide by Charles Darwin, where he talks about adaptability. So he says it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. So it's the most adaptable one to change that survives. And I think this is the most important thing that we Agilists and we in Agile organization are really trying to fit into adaptability. Taking an example of BlackBerry and Nokia, they were the market leaders once upon a time, but they were so adamant to their business model. So they were not changing their business model. They were not seeing what the customers were actually wanting. So what happened? They failed. They failed, and now we do not see BlackBerry phones anymore. Nokia also not much. But look at Apple. So what happened to Apple? Apple saw that opportunity that lied within. So it responded to that needs of the market needs, and that's how they are now the #1 company in the world in the name of technology. And Agile has always been about continuous improvement. They've always worked on inspect and adapt. So this is when we talk about lean in manufacturing, and we witnessed that in 1940s. So that's when they started their framework, and it was slowly, worked upon. In 1950s, we came up with the waterfall in software development, followed by Six Sigma concept in 1993. Then in 2001, the Agile Manifesto was there in place. And now we are there in a stage where we have the lean in software development. So if you look into all these stages, then there has been a continuous improvement, a continuous inspect and adapt mindset. So every version is a upgraded version of the previous one. So we can see that. I mean, we can witness that inspect and adapt has been always there in terms of agility. I would like to talk about these 4 values from the Agile Manifesto. The first one being individual and interactions over processes and tools. Yes, individuals and interactions is important. We always talk about processes so much, and our processes are so rigid that if that is causing a friction, let's say like your processes are the friction from you to being an Agile organization, then why don't you revise them? We say that this is a process and we need to follow this. We are being so adamant. What about the individuals and interactions then? Just an example, let's say like if your IT team needs a training in probably within 2 weeks to deliver a project, and your approval would take almost 4 months. Are you being agile? Is your organization being agile? Probably not. And the friction over there is the process. So if you're not doing anything to change the process, then I would be very sorry to say that the organization wouldn't be agile at all. Another good example would be let's say on VPN access. Let's say like you're working with some vendors and they are looking for some VPN access. But if that is going to take multiple approvals, and if that's going to take days because you're following certain processes and you're not overcoming these processes with some flexible workaround areas, then again you're not being agile, because you want your VPN access now. Is you want a VPN access now. You cannot wait until 2 days, because that's your wasted time. So that's one thing that I would like to highlight. The second one is on working products over comprehensive documentation. So let's see our organizations today. They are like they are more into documentation. You give your manager or your senior management a big book of of documentation, your requirement documentation, the project plan, your responsibility matrix, and everything is documented there, so well documented. Then they are happy. But if some documents are missing, then that's where the nagging comes in. And do you think that everybody goes, everybody starts reading so many documents? Why are we doing why are we doing the documentation when nobody even reads, these long pages of this pile of documents? So that's one thing to question again. The customer collaboration over contract negotiation. Let's talk about this. Customer collaboration would be required, but if you are always constantly negotiating, or you're talking with your vendor or your client on contract negotiation, so what will that bring along? Dysfunction. And is that what we are looking for in as an agile organization? Probably not. So if it's only going to bring dysfunction, then why don't we really think about collaborating with them, co-creating things and collaborating together instead of negotiating all the time? And finally, responding to change over following a plan. Um, Here I would like to give an example of Amazon. So what Amazon recently did, or did some couple of months back following the pandemic, is they shifted their focus of distribution to essential items. So they were delivering household items, uh, even more, and they hired some thousands of people to do that. And since then, if you look at the S&P of Amazon, then they have increased by 30%. And how have they been able to do that? Because they were able to respond to change quickly. Because now with the pandemic, what was required was a change in business model, which they witnessed, and they showed great adaptability, resilience, and leadership to do this. Another symptom I would like to talk about is change. Let's say change. When you talk about change, and if these are the words that is associated in your organization, when you hear the word change, yes, we are going to change. Now, the organization is changing, we are transforming. If these are the words that you come up with, trouble, uneasiness, distress, disturb, pain, ache, then I think that's also something to really think about. Because if you do not want to change, then agility would be really difficult to be established, because agility is all about experimenting, changing things, getting the right feedback. So that's one symptom that I would talk about. Other symptom would be a lacking heartbeat. Let's say like your team is following all the events. They're doing the Scrum ceremonies, they're doing the sprint planning, but at the end of each sprint, you're not getting a potential shippable increment. You're not getting any outcome. You're not getting any value. So is it what you are looking for? That's again a pain point for you. Symptom 3, customer feedback. How well is the organization incorporating the feedbacks from the customers in their products? How well are they involving the customers? Are your customers delighted or not? Because once you take, if you start taking feedbacks from your customer and start incorporating that in your work, then that's when you get delighted customers. If you're not doing that, then again, your product is not evolving around your customer needs. Blame game. This is one of the most common things that we see in organization. Yes, this was his fault, this is his fault, this is the IT's fault, this is business's fault, but nobody is taking the responsibility. Everybody is scared of experimenting because of the blame that's going to come at their end. So if this is again a common symptom in your organization, then again, I'm afraid that you've not witnessed true agility in the organization. Silo culture. Let's say you're doing a big data project, and you see that, just a moment. Yeah, you're doing a big data project and you see that the product team is not granted access to the business intelligence team. Now what happens? Are they able to make data-driven decisions? No. So what does it result into? Nothing, no value. So I think these types of silo culture is also one of the impediments from us in becoming an agile organization. Some other common symptoms, like product vision and strategies are not well communicated, roadmaps with fixed dates provided a year ahead by CXOs, while we know that agile projects are priority driven and not, you do not have fixed deadlines in them. If let's say, like, let's talk about the third symptom, stakeholders and CXOs insisting on every change to be approved by them in advance. So if you're going down to your CXOs for small change and small approvals, then that's again going to take a couple of time. So that's impeding you from being lean, and your time is being wasted. Products not being delivered incrementally. You're seeing the end products at the end of your project cycle. So again, there's a failure. Project managers or the scrum master are doing the product grooming. So what about the product owner? Where is he gone? So these are the common symptoms that we can see. And the sales team, they go and promise to the customer before they check the feasibility with the product team. Is this product feasible or not? Could that be designed in this timeline or not? So before checking on that, if your sales team goes and promises to the customers, then again they're failing on agility. So what is the remedy for all these things then? We've talked about the symptoms, we've talked about the nature, we've talked about the dysfunctions, but how do we overcome them with an agile mindset? And what is an agile mindset? It's all based on the values, the principles. The practices were there because of the principles were there because of the values. And if you are correctly following the values and principles, then probably you would be having an agile mindset. And who is responsible for setting this agile mindset? Again, the senior leadership, again, the CEO. So it's his responsibility for creating a culture, because you want to see a culture in which you want to thrive, not just sustain, but you want to thrive. And this desired culture could only be implemented if the CEO or the senior leadership himself is involved in the process. Just say, like, your CEO hires some consultant or delegates this work to C-1s or some other senior leadership, then do you think that that's going to work? Practically not, because he himself is not being involved. And setting up the culture requires a top to bottom approach and not a bottom to top approach. So if you're building your transformation only with frameworks, you're saying that, yes, I'm doing Scrum, my CEO has hired this consultant, and then we are doing Scrum, we are using SAFe, and we're agile. So you know what you're getting out of it if you're just following the framework and if the mindset is not present? This is what you get. You get a very good, well-crafted pig, which has no value, but it's accessorized and it looks very good, but the value is zero. So your management expectations are still there, unresolved and unmet. You're stuck with the same problems, it's not being resolved, and you've wasted your time completely. So what's required? The interlink in the agile mindset. It's all about people, processes, tools and technology, and business. People, your people are always there because they are the one who would be supporting and working on your transformation. Processes could be very simple. They shouldn't be so rigid and so adamant that they cannot be changed. So your processes, if your processes are flexible, because agile is related to flexibility, anything that is flexible, processes that are flexible are giving you an agile process, or like they are supporting your agile transformation. But again, like the example that I stated, the VPN access and the approvals and everything. So if that's very rigid, and if there's a friction, then again that's something that's missing. So agility is missing there. Technology could be very simple. You do not need to come up with very sophisticated tools. Jira is there, or even if you don't have Jira, then a simple whiteboard and paper would do. But let's say, like, if you have a distributed team, then probably you would be requiring a good communication tool, something like Teams or Zoom, so that you can do your virtual meetings and everything properly. And business is all about responding to change. A good example of Nokia, BlackBerry, and Amazon that I talked about earlier. So this is a little bit on the graphical side, on figuring out where your organization stands in a lean agile mindset. So these are 3 different types of organization. If you are more towards the left, then I think that the organization is still towards being a traditional organization. If it's more on the right, then this is where agility is all about. The value-based delivery, psychological safety, engaging people, collaboration, innovation, improvements. So you can use this tool to figure out where exactly your organization would stand. Yes, so agile practices are always built around empiricism. They're fact-based, they're experience-based, and they're evidence-based, and they have an emphasis on mindset and the cultural shift. But what is the foundation for all these things? It's the trust. It's the trust from the top level on the bottom level on your employees. So if the foundation itself is missing, then everything is gone. And what are the other pillars? Transparency. That's about knowing where you are now, knowing what to do now. Adaptation. What is the market condition? What is the market that wants? How do you adapt to their changing requirement? Is all about adaptation. I would again talk about the recent pandemic. There is a company called Dyson Electronics who makes electronic goods like vacuum cleaners and washing machine. But with the onset of pandemic, they started making ventilators, and in almost 2 weeks, they delivered some 15,000 ventilators. So that's how they pivoted quickly with a flexible mindset. They figure out what the customer, what the market is needing, and that's how they have changed the business model. So that's all about adaptation. And inspection is all about delivering in small chunks, seeing whether you're failing or not. You're experimenting, and you're inspecting and adapting at every step. So if you have all these things in place, then these are the pillars that would help you with your transformation. One thing I would like to talk about is moving from project funding to product funding, because we talk about project management so much and we forget the product side of it. So if you look into a traditional waterfall development, then you would see a project manager and a product product manager. A project manager is more inward looking, and a product manager is more outward looking. So a product manager is there to cater the needs of of the customers, while project manager is more on the execution side. But at the same time, if you go into agile development, then there is no word as such as project manager or product manager. All you have is a product owner who is more outward looking. So he's the one who is directly working with the customers and getting the feedbacks and in trying to incorporate that in every sprint. So maybe that's one concept that you could incorporate at work, moving from project funding to product funding to see a long-term benefit, because projects are just there for just gives you a short-term outcome. But if you go into product management, then that's where the real benefits are seen, or you reap the benefits of that product. Your people are important, like I said, yes. And who are your people then? Your customers, they are important. And agile also, there's one principle which also talks about building your projects around motivated individuals. Give them the support and trust that they need. So if you're doing this, if you have this within the team, then what do you deliver? Your teams are empowered to make decisions. Your teams are accountable for their own commitments and their deliverables. They are improving, you're fostering their improvements, and your customers are also happy. So as a whole, your people, your customer, your product delivery team, and your working team, your people are happy if you give all these kinds of support. So let's talk about one of the top reasons why agile is failing. So there are many reasons, but I'm just focusing in one reason for now. Any thoughts on mid-level managers? Any thoughts on your direct your line managers or the mid-level managers? So let's say, like, if this is what they are doing, micromanaging, having a fixed mindset with limited knowledge, focusing too much on project plan than the value that's there to be delivered, or they are focusing too much on documentation and they are more concerned about presenting this to the upper level than being a servant leader to you. They lack trust. They do not trust the subordinates, and they have a fear of empowering teams. So do you think that agile is going to survive in these kind of organization with such kind of management? Not at all. And you know what, truly agile organizations have no mid managers. So this is not there at all. And one of a very simple example is of Scrum Alliance. They do not have any mid-level managers or senior managers. All they have is product owners and Scrum Masters, and they're doing very good. So that's one example of organization who are truly operating in a fantastic way without having managers or mid-level managers. Finally, I talk about this one on an indicator. So this is an indicator showing that whether your customers are happy or not, or your employees and your stakeholders are happy or not, if your teams are failing or improving. So if you look at the lagging indicators, if your NPS is going down, if your customer satisfaction is failing, if the revenue per employee is decreasing and your ROI is not being met, then of course they're giving you some lagging indicators. But at the same time, if you go on in the right, and if you see that your customers are more happy now, if your employees are happy, your usage index is improving, your ROI is being met on time, then that's an indicator that probably you are there on the agile transformation, and probably you're doing the things right. That's all I would like to say, and I would like to conclude by saying that success today requires the agility and drive to constantly rethink, reinvigorate, react, and reinvent. Thank you, everyone. We can move into the questions if there are any. Questions, please.
We have around 6-7 minutes, so we have some time for questions. So please feel
Yeah,
free
either
to
you've
ask the
understood
questions.
everything or
Yeah.
you've not understood anything if there are no questions.
I have a question in the meantime. Oh, there it is from Priyanka.
Okay,
Abhigya.
yes. I'll just check that. Priyanka, do you think organization in Nepal is really agile? Okay. Thank you, Priyanka, for the first question. So, like I said, that what is agility all about? So it's all about responding to change, right? Responding to the market condition. Responding. It's all about how quickly you pivot your mindset from from doing things in a traditional way to doing things in a more different way that the market is really demanding. So yes, probably there are organizations because we can see with the global onset of the pandemic itself, we can witness organizations which have turned the way that they are doing things. I would not name these companies, but there are let's say like stores which used to operate only physically, which are now allowing online deliveries as well. And plus they're delivering instead of organize I mean these companies which used to deliver only maybe like they were more focused on the clothings and everything. Now they're delivering food items. So that's how they have pivoted their what do you say the marketing conditions, and they have changed their business models. So it is, I mean, yeah, they are there. It's not that they are not there. Of course they are there, because everything is changing. Even if you go into a bank, then the way that they are operating now is completely different from the way they used to operate in future. Yeah. We ourselves, we have started working from home, and we are working smoothly with no interruptions. Means we are doing things in a different way. So we have adapted to it, and there are companies, there are organizations who are doing it very well at this time as well. So I think I've asked you, I mean, I've answered your question. Priyanka, do you agree with that, or would you like me to add on anything to it? No? Okay, I'm going to take the second question then. This one is from Yukti. How do you deal when requirements change frequently? Okay, so again, this is again, I talked about project funding, and I talked about product funding. So let's say like in case of project funding, let's talk about project funding versus product funding. So I'm doing a project where requirements are changing frequently. What do? I go up with the CR. So there's a change request associated with everything. But now let's say like I'm doing things differently. I'm just planning. I'm doing it in an agile way. I'm just planning for one sprint. So my backlog for one sprint is ready, but I do not have the scope or the backlog ready for the entire product delivery. So there are things that I can cater in the next sprint. So that's where the flexibility comes in. So even though there are changing requirements, I can adjust that in the next sprint. So that's how you do it. So if you're focusing more on, if your scope is already there, you cannot freeze it, means your processes are very rigid, then again you're using CR. That's a very traditional way of doing things. But if you're doing it in a modern way, in an agile way, then your processes are not strict. You are delivering certain things in sprint one or your first release. In second release, you are taking in the, you are catering the requirements that's changing. So probably you can work on that. So that should not be a difficult situation if your organization is flexible to changes or is agile. So I think I've answered that as well. I will take the other question. What do you think is the sorry, where is it? Yeah, this is from Karun. What do you think is the most difficult for change apart from mindset? I think that's a tough question. But let's say like what's the most difficult thing for change besides mindset? I think it's mindset that's the most difficult. If you have conquered the mindset part, then I think you've conquered the most difficult part, because mindset is something like an iceberg. It's over there. You see the things on the top. You see the things on the top, but you do not see the 80% of thing that's there in water. So mindset is somewhere that's there in the water, right? That's not visible. So if you have conquered that already, if your mindset itself is already changed, if you know that you want to grow, if you know that you want to do things in a different way, if you have conquered that part, then I think there will not be anything on top that would be more difficult than conquering the mindset. So I think that's mindset is the most challenging part. Um, how can we measure?
Abhigya,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. So I think we have another minute or so. So
Okay.
yeah, and then we have 30 minutes break. So I think the one of the questions should be okay, and then we can take a break. Or if you want to
Okay.
continue, please, no problem.
Okay. So I'll take in the last question. This one is from
Sure.
Janki again. She writes, how can we measure our organization is agile or is agile or not? Can we measure how agile our organization is? Okay. I think there was a presentation from Sanjay who spoke about the how, why, and what part. So it's more about on. I totally agree on with him as well. So when you go from the why part to the how part to the what part, so I think that's where you see the visibility as well. If you want to follow certain matrices, if you want to do certain surveys, then that's also possible. One of them was the one that I showed you, like, is your organization towards innovation, or they are just there following processes? So there were a list of points which would see like where your organization would really fall into. Is it lean or is it more traditional? So there are certain surveys as well that you can do, but at the same time, there are certain things like circle of influence and circle of concern that you should be looking into. So circle of concern is something that you are concerned about. Yes, the global pandemic is a concern, earthquake is a concern, the government changes is a concern, but you do not have things over your control. That's not, those things affect your business, those things affect the way you work, those things affect the way your businesses run, but they are not in your control. But there are certain things that are in your control, and there is a circle of influence, like the way I motivate my employees to give me a better result, the way I do things differently. So these, if you look into things that is more into your in your hands, and leave it, I mean, don't think much about the things that's in your concern but you cannot do about it, then I think that's also one way of seeing how you could resolve on your current issues.